It is the Tuesday, October 28th edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov. Week 8 of the NFL season has wrapped up. It is now the week before the NFL trade deadline. It is a Tuesday here on the show. That usually means we have a special spotlight guest, but we are changing it up this week simply because, like I said, the NFL trade deadline is in exactly 1 week. The trade deadline over the years has become way busier than it ever was. Every single year, it feels like we have an uptick in trades. If you remember last year, we had a plethora of trades, including the likes of Devontae Adams and Marshawn Lattimore and DeAndre Hopkins and Amari Cooper, Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith, and all these different players who were traded before the NFL trade deadline. We've seen trades already happen across the NFL in recent weeks, including Joe Flacco. Just on Monday, we had the Titans trade away their former second-round pick cornerback, Roger McCreary. On today's episode, we're going to be doing a bit of a trade deadline preview, talking about who are the trade candidates, who are the buyers, who are the sellers, who's looking to add players, who's looking to add draft picks. We're going to talk about all of it here on today's show, a special Tuesday edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. So let me bring in my good friend and my producer, Ben Allen. Ben, what's going on, my friend? How's everything going?
Things are wonderful. Yeah, I'm happy to be back on a Tuesday episode today. This is exciting. I don't know how to contain myself. This is fantastic. I do have to ask you, Ari, though, because I know you're all about the moves in the NFL. You love all the movement from free agency to trades. Where does the trade deadline rank for you, like in the comparison of like free agency, like legal tampering period, draft, and trade deadline? Like, where do those all line up for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably put it somewhere near the bottom of the top five. I think trade that I think free
Get people
agency.
excited, Ari. It's definitely
Yeah,
not one.
it's not one. I think free agency is still number one. I think the draft is right there as well. It's interchangeable, but it's somewhere in that 3-4 range, I would say, somewhere around there where there is always activity. And the reality is, in my world and the people who are trying to gather the information and find out exactly what's going on, we hear more about the stuff that didn't happen or are close to happening than the stuff that did happen. Like we've done story time here on NFL Spotlight over the last year and a half of trades that almost happened. Right? We've done a lot of those. We hear a lot of that here in the NFL. Oh, this would have happened if not for that. Or we called this team and they were interested. The owner said no. So there's always those type of things that happen. There's been a couple of those so far this year already, which are not in the public yet, but we still have a week to go until we could really reveal some of the stories. Maybe those trades will happen here, but it's definitely an exciting time. It's definitely a busy time, and I'm sure, Ben, you remember this. Like I said before, there used to be a time where the trade deadline was non-existent. We've gotten this younger, aggressive, more GMs around the NFL willing to wheel and deal, move on from draft picks, get new players in the building. They'll figure out the playbook. They'll figure it out with their coaches. Will teach them whatever it is. It's a new era in the NFL. I always say the story. I think I've said it here before on the show. There was that 1 year before the NFL trade deadline when Mark Barron was traded, and it was like a celebration in the NFL that we got a trade before the deadline. That's no longer the NFL now. We have way more trades, and we're gonna have a plethora over here leading up to next week.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think that particularly as we've seen these younger GMs now like stepping into it, the guys who grew up, doing Madden and all these kind of like fun things, we've slowly seen the league transition from being that league that doesn't want to make the moves to more like the MLB, more like the NBA, where are seeing a lot of these moves. You already told me this morning, you're like, hey man, there's gonna be some trades coming. Like there's a couple teams that we've already circled that like they're gonna be potentially in the market to be making some moves. So before we get to like the particular buyers and sellers, I think it's important for us to identify some of those players that we really should be keeping an eye on, not necessarily tying them to a specific team, but understanding who we are. We know guys like Jakobi Meyers have already gone out there. They've made a trade request. Trey Hendrickson, friend of the show, has been somebody who's been talked about for a while. Who are some of the people that we should be keeping a close eye on with the deadline just a week away?
I want to go a little bit position by position on this one, and I guess we'll start with the quarterbacks, where it's not expected to be much activity when it comes to that position. We saw the Bengals make their move of Joe Flacco. Really, I don't expect there to be much activity here. I don't think Kirk Cousins gets traded. He has a no trade clause. He started this week. Definitely did not help his case with that scenario there of the way he played versus the Miami Dolphins. Really, the only names I'm kind of keeping an eye on, maybe Russell Wilson, maybe Cooper Rush, who was just benched by the Baltimore Ravens, now the third string quarterback. That's really about it when it comes to the quarterbacks. We can move on from that here. The running backs is actually more interesting. I think it will have some activity. The biggest name that everyone is keeping an eye on just had a monster game on his own. Breece Hall with the New York Jets got their first win. He had 133 yards, two rushing touchdowns, the game winning passing touchdown to Mason Taylor. The simple reality here, though, is that he is in the final year of his contract, and the team has had very minimal communication on an extension. So if you're not going to extend him, if you like the players behind him, Braylon Allen is going to be out for a significant time, but he is somebody who the regime is very high on. They drafted a running back in this past draft who has had some moments as well. If that's the case, if you could get some real draft capital for Breece Hall, I could see him being the top of the running back trade market over here coming up before next week. Some other names on the market: Tony Pollard in Tennessee, veteran running back. We've seen the Titans make a couple of trades already. I think you're going to see a theme over here with this list. A lot of Titans players on this list. New GM Mike Morganzi, head coach already fired. They want to bring in more and more draft picks and bring in some young players here in the future by way of the draft. Jerome Ford in Cleveland really has seen his role diminish significantly ever since Kinshon Judkins got back from his off the field situation, back on the field now. Jerome Ford would make sense. Jalen Wright, the former draft pick in Miami, has barely seen the field this year. Damian Pierce, former draft pick in Houston, barely has seen the field this year. Zamir White, former draft pick in Las Vegas, barely seen the field this year. Those are the names that we're kind of keeping an eye on over here. So that's the start of here. Quarterbacks and running backs, that's the list that we have right now so far in the NFL.
Yeah, it was nice of you to start with a running back who threw a passing touchdown just to kind of make the perfect transition for it. No offense to the list of guys that you gave there, but the difference between a Breece Hall and the rest of the names you said is significant because that feels like a guy that, like, you take him into your offense, that's an immediate upgrade over many of the players that are going to be in that room. What would compensation look like trading for guy like Breece, who, like you said, has some significant value as an impact player, but is entering that final year of the deal? Or I'm sorry,
Well,
not entering, is in the final year of the deal.
exactly. In the final year of his deal, slated to become a free agent. And really, there is no avenue to keep him. You're not going to franchise tag him. Well, I would consider that to be very, very unlikely, I would say. So if that's the case, if you're the Jets, you don't want to give him up for a fifth, sixth, seventh round pick. You're really looking to get potentially something as high as a third round pick for a player like Breece Hall. If you're the new GM, Darren Muji, you're obviously weighing a few things over here about, if I trade away this player who I know I'm not going to retain, I at least want to get value here, because the other part of it as well is, maybe if we want to play the compensatory pick formula game, which some teams like to do, then maybe we could get a pick by way of letting him go as a free agent. So that's the stuff that the Jets are kind of weighing here. And maybe they want to keep Brees Hall. They've had to have him, they've had him here for 8 games so far this year. Maybe he's good with this offense. Maybe you're like, you know what? We like what he is. We also like Braylon Allen, who eventually will be back. We like the rookie that we drafted, but Brees is a whole different level. Maybe they try to extend him over here once the season is over. So this is the stuff they're trying to weigh over here as an organization. But I look at a team like the Chargers, who have lost Omarion Hampton for the next few weeks at a minimum. They lost Najee Harris. I look at a team like the Chiefs, who, Pacheco has been okay. They like the rookie that they have over there, but you want a big impact guy, difference maker. The Houston Texans as well. I think, Marks, the rookie, Woody Marks, has been good. Nick Chubb has been okay. You want the big guy, big hitter, someone who can make a difference maker. Maybe those type of teams come in with a significant trade offer, and as a result, you're able to make the trade. But I don't see the Jets trading him for the sake of trading him. They really got to get real value to make that happen.
Someone calls right now, Muji, we'll give you a third. Does he say yes?
I think he strongly considers it. That's the answer I would give you. A third round pick in the upcoming draft. Keep in mind, if he wants to play the compensatory pick formula game and he's able to get a compensatory pick, that's not in 26. That happens in 27. So if you want to get a pick in 26, the best time to do it is right now. So I think a third is one where You call up Aaron Glenn, you tell your head coach, hey, what do you think about this? We're 1-7. I know he's important. I know he's a good player, but we get a third round pick right now. What do you think? I think they have that conversation and take it very seriously.
Do you think that, and this is kind of like a loaded question within itself, has the Breece Hall tenure for the Jets not been a failure, but not lived up quite to the hype of what they had hoped he would be based off of what they saw in college?
I mean, they used a second round pick on him. They actually traded up with the Giants to get him in that draft, which was a very successful draft, by the way. Of course, getting Sauce Gardner, number 4, Garrett Wilson, number 10, trading up for Jermaine Johnson in the 20s, and then getting Brees Hall at the top of the second round. It's always been the injuries, which have been was a problem early on in his career. And really, we never saw the real consistency out of Brees Hall. I wouldn't call it a failure. It just hasn't been the superstardom that I think most fans thought he could be out of Iowa State. So I wouldn't call it a failure. The reality is, again, Ben, is that he's very young. He still has a lot of, tread on his tire over here. So that goes back to my original point. If you're this new regime, you got to figure out, is Brees Hall part of our future? And if he is, do we want to pay him 8, 9, 10, $11 million per year? And if not, then why not trade him if that good enough offer comes in? So that's, again, this is the stuff that they're balancing over here in the next week. And I think his performance on Sunday definitely helped their case of showcasing him around the NFL and be like, hey, if you guys make a good enough offer, this is the type of player you might be able to get for your stretch run of the playoffs.
Not taking the contract aside, do you think that the league views him as a top half running back, top 16 in the league right now? Because if you're valuing him as such, like that $8 to $11 million number could be palatable for many a teams, particularly the team like the Jets that don't have a lot of long-term money tied up at quarterback, and we probably assume they're going to be in the quarterback market moving forward.
I don't have the list of running backs in front of me, but the way I look at Brees Hall, if I'm a different team, is look at what happened in Carolina, which is you had Chuba Hubbard who you paid, and then Rico Dowdle played for a couple of games and was just so much better. I think trading for a Brees Hall, if you're a team like the Chiefs or the Texans or even the Chargers right now, who are getting good play out of Vidal, who is in there instead of Marion Hampton. But like if you put in Brees Hall into your offense, where does it go from there? And I think in that scenario, your offense goes to a whole different level than where it was right now. So he's definitely a special running back who has elite traits and great footwork and really can make things happen out of nothing. I don't know where he is around the NFL, but if you put him in a good situation with a really good quarterback where you could have the play action type of game going on over here and do stuff like that. And keep in mind, he's also an exceptional pass catcher as well. He can catch the ball in the backfield as well, which for a lot of teams around the NFL who have great quarterbacks could be a weapon as well. So I think there's definitely interest in Brees Hall. But again, going back to the original point, it comes down to the Jets and how they value him and how they value him on the trade market, and if they're willing to take that type of an offer. Hey guys, Ari here to tell you that we are so excited to be working with our friends over at Root Insurance. Root Insurance believes that good drivers deserve better rates, so they have created a new kind of car insurance that rewards good drivers in an easy to use app. It's very simple. While you're driving, they gather and they analyze data from your smartphone sensors. After a few weeks, you will get a car insurance quote based primarily on your driving.
Yeah, and Ari, you can test it before you switch, which really helps you get the perfect way of knowing what you're going to be paying based on your driving, which honestly, we all could use a little bit of feedback. I know I need it. You probably need it too, Ari. And Root can help you with all of that stuff before you even make the switch. And, speaking of that app that you were talking about earlier, the app's great for more things than just that. You can use it to be able to make updates to your policy, change your coverage, or even file a claim in just a couple minutes.
So get started today by visiting root.com, ROOT.com, and learn how you could save for good driving.
All right, Ari, we got to talk about what's going on in the NFL with the top teams. Right now, we only have two teams in the NFL with one loss, with the Colts in the AFC and the Packers in the NFC, albeit they have a tie, which always messes up the way that the records look. My question for you today is, which player would you say is driving winning the most right now?
I mean, it's hard not to, for you to ask that question and for the answer not to be Daniel Jones. What he's been doing so far this year on a 1-year contract in Indianapolis, it's very reminiscent, Ben, to when the Buccaneers signed Baker Mayfield to a 1-year contract. Both quarterbacks went into a competition. Baker of Kyle Trask, who was drafted by Tampa Bay. Indy was with Anthony Richardson, who they drafted. You think those guys have the upper edge, and he comes in and just takes it. And being from New York, I saw what Daniel Jones went through in New York and how it seemed like he didn't enjoy football anymore. It seemed like he wasn't having fun anymore. And here he is now in Indianapolis, and this pairing with Shane Steichen has been the most perfect quarterback head coach pairing of this NFL season. And he is having the most fun he's ever had. He has unbelievable weapons. What Jonathan Taylor is doing in the backfield has been really fun to watch. And the offensive line does not get enough credit. They have been outstanding, all five of them. And as a result, Daniel Jones has been great. The Colts have the best record going into week 9, which is mind boggling, but that's where we are here in the NFL. It's what makes it so great. And Daniel Jones, once again, is in line to get another big contract after this season, and he's going to be the Colts' future franchise quarterback.
And more deserving than ever. Also, that Quentin Nelson block yesterday on the Jonathan Taylor, or I guess on Sunday on the Jonathan Taylor play, massive. Love me what the Colts have got going on right now. And speaking of things you're going to love Root Insurance. So head over there, root.com, learn how you can get rewarded for good driving. There are a lot of teams around the NFL that are looking to add to their outside weapons. Like I mentioned before, there are guys like Jakobi Meyers that have already expressed that they would be interested in getting moved. Who are some of the names at the wideout position that we should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I've never gotten the sense that Jaylen Waddle, who's been out there, has been a serious consideration to trade in Miami. Like for most teams, I think most teams would take calls on virtually every player on their roster. Like there was the report over the weekend, the Jaguars are willing to listen to Brian Thomas Jr. The Jaguars are willing to listen to everybody. That's the way James Gladstone operates. I don't consider that to be a groundbreaking report. Liam Cohn on Monday said we do not think we're going to trade him. But again, the point is they are willing to listen. But the receivers who are known to be available around the NFL going into this week, if you're looking for a receiver, the number one team right now to call is the New Orleans Saints. They have Rashid Shaheed, the burner, the vertical threat guy, who has become much more than that, by the way. I hate the fact that he wears number 2. It doesn't fit him as a receiver, but that's a whole different story. But he's in the final year of his contract. He is somebody who is believed to be available for the right price. I look at a team like the Buffalo Bills, who would make a lot of sense for a player like Rashid Shaheed. Brandon Cooks, who signed in New Orleans this offseason. He's already been traded 4 times in his NFL career. If he gets traded again, it would be an NFL record 5th time. He is believed to be available on the trade market. Chris Olave still has 1 more year left on his contract. I don't think he's as available as the other 2 names, but again, similar to last year, no one thought Marshawn Lattimore would get traded, and then Washington came in and made that big package of an offer with multiple picks that was able to get a Marshawn Lattimore trade done. If you call him Chris Olave, you got to do some serious convincing to the GM Mickey Loomis and put together a legitimate package for him. But that's 3 receivers in New Orleans to definitely keep an eye on. Jakobi Meyers in Las Vegas, final year of his contract, openly said last week that he still wants to get traded. He requested a trade before the season due to his contract. The Raiders, for what it's worth, did sign another veteran receiver on Monday, agreeing to terms with Tyler Lockett, who reunites with Pete Carroll and Geno Smith. So maybe, just maybe, that's a telltale sign. Maybe they're willing to trade a Jakobi Meyers, who again has had no real conversations on a legitimate contract extension in Las Vegas. He would make sense. Frankly, if you look around the NFL, there's a bunch of teams who need receivers. I look at Pittsburgh. I mentioned Buffalo before. I think even a team like the Giants, who are not having a great year record-wise, but they might have their future franchise quarterback. Remember how the Bears were once upon a time not so much of a great team that year, but they traded for Chase Claypool to try to help Justin Fields. Obviously, that was a failure, but that is the type of theme I think the Giants could be thinking of over here in trying to help their young quarterback. Speaking of the Giants, there is a receiver on that team who was a healthy scratch this past week. Jalen Hyatt, the former Tennessee wide receiver, University of Tennessee receiver. He's seen the field this year. He just has not had the connection with Russell Wilson or with Jackson Dart. I think they've been open to trading him for over a year. I don't know what his future is there, but if the team is willing to do one of those, 6, 7 swaps, I think that is definitely a situation that could happen. Calvin Ridley in Tennessee is the most interesting one. He's missed the last couple of weeks with a hamstring injury. Very big contract, not an easy contract to move. But Tennessee, like we said before, very open to business, willing to move on from players. They want to add draft picks. I would definitely keep an eye on his name as well over here. I don't think he gets traded, but again, Tennessee is open to trading quite literally everybody, unless your name is Cam Ward and Jeffrey Simmons and maybe like Devondre Swift. That's about it for them.
All right, so you mentioned all those wide receivers, a few more bigger names than necessarily what we saw with the running back group. Is it fair to say that Chris Olave would probably be the most expensive of the bunch?
Chris Olave would probably be the most expensive of that list that I gave. If Jaylen Waddle was entertained by Miami, I think he would be more expensive. If Brian Thomas Jr., I think he would be somewhere in that same category as well, since he's just
Ari,
in it.
what is the deal
Listen,
with this Brian Thomas Jr. thing?
it's
This sounds insane to me.
I agree with you. I don't think he gets traded. The only reason it's being brought up is that teams saw how great he was as a rookie. And I've seen how much he has struggled this year in this Liam Cohn offense. I believe he leads the NFL in drops with 9. As a result, teams have been like, hey, let's check in with the Jaguars. So now, if you're a team and you're going to call the Jaguars and you're going to offer a first round pick, of course the Jaguars are going to listen. But that's really not why I don't even know why I'm bringing him up over here. I don't think he should be part of this conversation, but that's where the extent of all of this came up. I mean, that's the context behind all of it. So the Jaguars, James Gladstone, he comes from the Rams. They were willing to listen to everyone. Remember, they traded away Jared Goff once. Like they'll trade away players if they have to. But I don't see him getting traded. But he's definitely had his struggles. He's definitely had his drops. And frankly, the entire offense has had their drops. It's been a very weird case of the drops in Jacksonville so far this year. But I don't think he gets traded. But going back to your question, when you ask me who are some of the receivers and who would be the most expensive one, I think Brian Thomas would probably be one of the most expensive ones simply because he's only in the second year of his contract, still has 4 more years of control, and had one of the great rookie receiving seasons that we had in some of the recent history in the NFL. So that's the way I look at it. So those guys are definitely up there. Olave will be the most expensive of this group for sure. But keep in mind, Olave has a concussion history, and teams are definitely concerned about that as well. So there's a lot of different things to juggle over here. But I think Shaheed and Jakobi Meyers are the two big name receivers who are actually available. And if you give a call and you actually give a legitimate offer, and again, similar to that third round pick area, I think those teams will be interested in doing a deal.
I do want to ask about Waddle because that was someone you brought up. Does his contract kind of play in actually as a positive for his, for actually his trade value? Because while he's already gotten that money as an extension, it does seem like it's probably a pretty palatable contract to bring on.
Yeah, he already received most of his signing bonus money from the Dolphins. So the contract, if you were to trade for him, you're getting a pretty good deal for a player of his stature. But the Dolphins have been adamant they are now looking to trade him. And frankly, when you look at the Dolphins, you look at their books and you look at their future, Tyreek Hill is very cuttable after this season, regardless of the injury. So if that's the case, Jalen Waddle should slide right in as the wide receiver one. I don't care that Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel might be on the hot seat. That is not a move you make over here, even if you're thinking about the future or the present, whatever it is. Jalen Waddle is part of the future, and you really, really would have to offer something of crazy significance for Miami to consider moving him.
What about Rashid Shaheed? I feel like, he's somebody that we've briefly spoken to in the past during like Radio Row kind of stuff. He's an incredibly, intelligent, likable guy that I think has a very cult following. I know our social media producer, our lead social media producer here at 33rd Team, James Duffy, is quite literally insane about Rashid Shaheed. Do you see him as somebody that if you trade for him, he could actually have a very big impact on your offense?
I think Rashid Shaheed is the perfect type of player you're trying to get if you're in playoff contention right now. He's a big play threat. We've seen that happen over and over and over again in New Orleans, but he has really worked on getting better as a receiver with his route tree. Spencer Rattler, when he was the quarterback throughout the course of the season so far, has been finding Rashid Shaheed in a multitude of different ways. You could use him in a bunch of different ways. Kellen Moore, the new head coach, has used him in a bunch of different ways. And he's just 27 years old, the final year of his contract, like we said. And the reason why the Saints are entertaining the idea of trading him is because I don't think they'll be able to pay both of these receivers that they have with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. In fact, we had Nick Underhill, the great Saints reporter, on the show before the season started. We were talking about the Saints, the season preview for them. He said it perfectly. Both these receivers need to get paid after this season. They both have the same agent, both same representation. So if that's the case, how are you going to pay both of these, especially when one influences the other? So if that's the case, that's why I think one of these guys do get traded, you get something for them. It makes a lot of sense. And think about it, Josh Allen's exceptional arm, throwing it to Rashid Shaheed. That sounds like a lot of fun. So there's teams over here. Patrick Mahomes, I think, would be the same way, but I think they have enough receivers right now with the way they're operating. But point is, there's a lot of gunslinging quarterbacks out there in the NFL right now where Rashid Shaheed would fit in the offense. And again, he's more than just a vertical threat. He's really worked on himself as a receiver, and he's in a contract year. Moving to a new team, I think, would be something that could definitely also help him with a better quarterback, and then becoming a free agent and getting the big money contract he's been waiting for his entire career.
What do you think that John Spytek, the GM of the Raiders, would be looking to get for a guy like Meyers?
I think he's looking for a day two pick. I mean, that's kind of what you're looking for. Jakobi Meyers is a really, really good player, underrated receiver, someone who we've been trying to get on the show before this whole contract thing kind of blew up over here. And they were basically like, hey, we won't do it right now. We'll do it after, whatever. So he's somebody we've been trying to get on the show over here because he's such an underrated player, such a good receiver, 1,000 yards. New England, Las Vegas, quarterbacks, whoever it is, doesn't really matter. He's been really just consistently great as a receiver. And the Raiders wanted to keep him. The problem has been finding the right value for him. And he's been looking for the mid 20s. The Raiders have valued him a little bit lower than that. And that's where it kind of all exploded in everyone's face and the trade request happened. He switched agents about a year ago. A lot has happened over here. But if he's going to trade him, you're looking at a situation where, again, you want to get a day two pick, even though he's a rental. And we've said this before, we'll say it again. The Raiders' current regime is just so interesting because Pete Carroll is, 73, 74 years old, is in this win now mode. I want the players who can win now. Meanwhile, you have a GM and John Spytek who obviously wants to win now, wants to compete now, but is also thinking about 2026 and 2027. And how do you balance those two thought processes between these two guys over here? So the Raiders, for example, at 2-5, signing Tyler Lockett on Monday morning, that's not something you usually see out of a 2-5 team. But here they are doing that. So that element of it with Jakobi Meyers makes it also very, very interesting. And it's got to be good value for them to actually part with it.
We saw a trade before the season for a notable tight end in Jonnu Smith heading from the Miami Dolphins out to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is there anybody on the market right now of that mold that could come in and actually, have some sort of an impact? Maybe not necessarily your tight end one, but are there any guys out there that we should be watching that could be on the move here soon?
Yeah, I think there's at least two that I'll bring up over here. There's probably more, but somebody who is a true tight end one in my mind, David Njoku in Cleveland, final year of his contract, has had great moments over the course of his career, really great receiving tight end. But he is somebody who, like I said, final year of his deal, but also the Browns have been very impressed and really love their rookie tight end that they drafted, Harold Fannin Jr., who has really been coming down with every ball that has been going in his direction. He appears to be the real deal, a true tight end one. He really showed that off in Bowling Green when he was there in college, had historical numbers for the FBS, and of course got drafted by the Browns. Njoku, like I said, final year of his deal. I think Njoku wants to stay in Cleveland, but at the same time, this is an organization that is trying to balance the present and the future. We've seen them make a couple of trades already this year, including trading away Joe Flacco in state in division to the Bengals. So I think David Njoku is one. I think Chink Okonkwo, the tight end in Tennessee, again, a tight ends player, is another player who's in the final year of his contract, has flash potential, still very young, will be a free agent after the season. He is somebody who is known around the NFL as available. I don't think it will take much to get him, but he is somebody who could definitely be a viable tight end for a team here down the stretch if you make that trade.
All right, Ari, let's go ahead and talk about the position group that is always needed and rarely available. Offensive line. Anybody of note there?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go through a few names here. And again, it's such a position that is hard to trade for. You don't find guys available that often. If they're available, it's got to be because they truly have not played so well, or they were benched, or they were replaced, or you really have a lot of depth, which is really, really rare. So, some of the names that I'll mention here, Braxton Jones, the starting left tackle in Chicago for the last several years. He was actually demoted after the bye. He is no longer the starting left tackle. He is in the final year of his contract, former fifth round pick. The Bears actually have a lot of offensive tackle depth. They drafted Ozzie Trapillo in the second round. They've been experimenting with all these different players dating back to training camp. Braxton Jones, he appears to be expendable in Chicago. If you want to get something for him, I think that would make sense. Kevin Zeitler is probably the most notable name here in Tennessee. Long-time veteran guard, has started basically every game that he's been healthy so far this year. Obviously, again, Titans player here. The Titans do have some depth in their interior of the offensive line. I don't know if you want to trade him and potentially hurt Cam Ward as a result, but I do think the Titans do have some young guys behind him who they want to check out at some point this year. So I could see him being available in trade. And then this guy has been, in my mind, available for trade for over a year. Evan Neal, the former number 7 overall pick by the New York Giants, has been a healthy scratch for most of the season. Could play tackle, could play guard, has had a lot of struggles in the NFL. Feels like he needs a change of scenery. It would make sense to try to move on from him. He barely plays, and when he does, doesn't feel like Giants fans are very happy with him. So it would make sense for all parties. But to this point, nobody has been interested in trading for him. But offensive line has always been a very difficult position to find on the trade market.
All right, let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. Edge rushers are always the most exciting to talk about, but we got to give some love to our big men up the middle of the defense there on the line. Anybody there?
There's a couple of names out here. There's been some people have proposed the idea of Quentin Williams getting traded by the Jets. I don't see it happening. I think for it to even be considered, you got to give up a first round pick. I don't see it happening. I think he's part of the future for Aaron Glenn. Shelby Harris in Cleveland has been available for most of the season, uh, dating back to the offseason, frankly. Really good player, great locker room guy. Actually had the game winning blocked field goal in that win over the Packers in week 2 or 3, whatever week that was, when the Browns upset the Packers. But he's a player who'd be available if you're looking for someone in the middle of your defense. Would definitely make some sense over there. But really, the depth of the trade market this year is actually the pass rush. That's really where it's at, Ben. And we'll go through some of these names over here, and we'll start in Miami here, where they have 3 guys who people are keeping a very close eye on: Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, Matthew Judon. Phillips is a player whose final year of his rookie contract. Bradley Chubb has no more guaranteed money on his contract. Matthew Judon has been a healthy and active here and there over the last couple of weeks. If you're looking for a pass rush, that is the place to at least give a start when it comes to phone calls. I think at least one of those guys gets traded. I think Judon frankly could get released if no team trades for him once the trade deadline officially passes next week. Keon White, the former second round pick in New England. Patriots are 6-2. They've been a great team. Keon White has not exactly fit into this Mike Vrabel team. Like I said, former second round pick. He was a healthy scratch this past week versus the Cleveland Browns. When you're a healthy scratch at this time of year before the trade deadline, that definitely raises some eyebrows over here. Malcolm Kuntz, the pass rusher in Las Vegas. A couple years ago, he looked like he was an emerging superstar in the NFL as a pass rusher. Suffered a torn ACL last year, has been trying to get back into his groove so far this year, but final year of his contract right now. That is a player I think the Raiders would be willing to entertain as a trade. Arnold Ebiketie, the former day 2 pick of the Atlanta Falcons, also has seen his playtime reduced over here over the last several weeks. In Cleveland, there's a number of names over there as well who they would be willing to move on from Joe Tryon Shoyinka, Alex Wright, Cameron Thomas. Some of these guys are their draft picks. Some of these guys are their former free agent signings. Just again, Cleveland has a bunch of names that they are willing to move on from. And then a very interesting name to me, I think Kayvon Thibodeau of the Giants, another very interesting one. We mentioned Evan Neal before. In the same draft class was Kayvon Thibodeau, who was the number 5 overall pick in that draft. Has had some moments, should have had the fumble recovery this past week on that tush push, which was called forward progress, and the whistle was blown early. But he's a player as well who is nearing the end of his rookie contract. I just wonder in which direction do the Giants believe they are with him? Do they actually want to extend him and keep him long term? Or maybe just maybe you can get some value for him over here when his peak is at its potentially its highest over here. So those are some needs over here when it comes to the pass rush market. It's definitely loaded, and that is the one position over here in the NFL that teams believe is the most loaded when it comes to this year's trade deadline.
You didn't mention Trey Hendrickson. Should you?
I'll mention Trey Hendrickson because it really is dependent on where the Bengals are over here as a team. It was a stunning loss, definitely on Sunday when they lost to the New York Jets. They have 3 wins on the year. They're still holding out hope that Joe Burrow could come back at the end of the year. But if you keep on losing, then all hope is kind of going to vanish over here. So they're going to have to wait and see over here what happens on Sunday versus the Bears. That could definitely swing the pendulum one way or another, and if they take those calls seriously or not. But knowing the Bengals and knowing their history and knowing their tendencies and knowing the way they negotiate in trades, I don't think they trade Trey Hendrickson unless they get an offer that is very, very significant. Like I'm talking about a second round pick at a minimum for that to even be a consideration in that front office.
And even though that deal was like a 1-year redo, right? Like they can still tag him this offseason. So they don't necessarily have the fear of like, we're going to lose him for nothing.
The thing is, he has not Trey Hendrickson has definitely been bringing the pressure. The sack numbers have not been there compared to last year, but he's also been getting hurt this year. Hip injury, re-aggravated the hip injury. At some point, as an organization, you even wonder if you consider the franchise tag. So I don't even know if that's currently on the table of the way the season has gone so far. But that game versus the Bears coming up on Sunday will give us a good idea of how the Bengals are thinking in terms of this 2025 season.
All right, let's move back a level. Linebackers, always important. A lot of green dots that are probably, you know, some impactful guys around. What do you think? Who's out there?
Yeah, before I get to that, I do want to mention one more pass rusher, Arden Key in Tennessee, one more Titans player. I think he's available as well. But yeah, on to linebackers here. Logan Wilson in Cincinnati, he requested a trade recently. Again, Bengals are very difficult when it comes to trade requests. I don't think they're looking to seriously consider trading him. I think Dallas would make sense. I think Indianapolis would make sense. But again, we'll see where the Bengals are sitting over here as an organization after this week's game versus the Chicago Bears. Logan Wilson, a captain, really important player, somebody who they extended a couple years ago, has seen his snaps diminish week over week to some younger players. That's why he is a bit frustrated with his role. Quincy Williams of the New York Jets just came back from an injury, returned from IR this past week in that win over the Cincinnati Bengals. He's also nearing the end of his contract. He would be a player who would make sense as a potential trade candidate. I think look at the situation in San Francisco where they lost Fred Warner, his former head coach, and Robert Saleh is the defensive coordinator. It definitely makes a lot of sense. Quincy Williams wanted an extension before the season. The Jets did not want to extend him. Instead, they gave him some escalators in his contract to make him have a chance to earn more money. But I think that is a bit of a telltale sign of what they think of him as an organization with this new regime. Christian Harris with the Houston Texans. Do you remember that name in the playoff game versus the Cleveland Browns a couple years ago? Picked off Joe Flacco, had the pick six, had a big game in that game. His role has completely evaporated in this Houston Texans defense. Somebody who just does not get playing time anymore. He would be a player who I think would be open to a fresh start if the Texans were okay with trading him, which I think they would be willing to do it as long as a good enough offer comes in. And then lastly, Tennessee Titans, once again, Draymond Jones, linebacker, defensive lineman, whatever you want to consider him, can play a little bit in both places. He is somebody who was signed by the organization this offseason, 1-year deal, has had some moments, has had some sacks, but another player who they're looking to stockpile draft picks. It's the theme of this entire episode so far. Tennessee Titans willing to move off on the players. Draymond Jones is another one.
All right. And let's go ahead and group our DBs together, the safeties and the cornerbacks. Who we got out there that is of note on the trade deadline front?
Yeah, I think there's a number of names here that are very interesting. We'll go back to the New York Jets over here. Michael Carter the second, their slot cornerback. He is somebody who does not feel like exactly fits in the Aaron Glenn defense. Has had some injuries this year as well. From all the Jets players we mentioned so far over here, I think he's the one that probably makes the most sense to get traded over here. Got a very well-deserved extension when Robert Saleh was the head coach. Really was one of the best slot corners in the NFL. It just has not necessarily worked out the way anybody has wanted it to so far this year. He would make sense as a trade target. He does have some guaranteed money going into next year as an injury guarantee. So I could see that being a holding pattern here for some teams, unless he and his agent are willing to move that around to make him more easier to take on for a new team. But that's one name over here. The most interesting name by far is for a team that's actually a winning team at 5-2 and has played a lot of snaps. That is Tariq Woolen in Seattle. There was that very interesting report a couple of weeks ago that the Seahawks would be open to listening to trading him. The reality is that it doesn't feel like that is a player who has exactly enjoyed the new Mike McDonald defense, I would say. Even though he's playing upwards of 90% of snaps every single game, Devon Witherspoon has been out most of the year. He's coming back most likely after the bye. They really love Josh Joby, another cornerback on that team. Woolen's in the final year of his contract. I don't think he's a player who gets traded for a draft pick per se, but if you could do a flip of player for player, I think that is something that could definitely be on Seattle's radar. Again, I don't think it's a guarantee he gets traded. I just think that's a very interesting situation that has been unfolding in Seattle for a number of months over there, dating back to the offseason. And then one more name over here I'll mention Alante Taylor of the New Orleans Saints. Young player, needs a new contract after the year. They really like the guys they have on the team. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Quincy Riley, some of these cornerbacks on the team. Taylor is very, very good, really, really talented. We saw them move on from a different cornerback in the offseason with Paulson Adebo leaving as a free agent. There's just questions about if they are still going to pay him. If you're not, will you be willing to trade him after also trading Marshall Lattimore last year? So a lot of questions in New Orleans there of their secondary room. That's another name to keep an eye on over here.
Don't think I forgot to ask about the special teamers, people. We got any kickers, punt returners, kick returners, great tacklers, anybody we should be keeping an eye on? Don't
That's a
laugh.
I'm
Kickers,
not
there's a lot of sucky kickers out there right now.
That's it. There are some kickers who are struggling, but it's very, very rare to have in-season kicker trades. It does not happen. There was that one preseason where we had three kicker trades because teams carried two kickers during training camp and preseason. We saw Dustin Hopkins getting traded, all these different guys getting traded. I have not heard of any kicker trades in the works right now around the NFL, so we're gonna pass on that one.
What about any signings trying to maybe get a college kid to I don't know, a college game day kid to come out and try to kick for a team? He's not on the team, so he's available, right?
I do think there are some veteran players. I mean, kidding all jokes aside, there are some veteran players out there who are definitely still waiting for the right opportunity. In some cases, have purposely not signed with teams. I look at a player like a Justin Simmons. I look at a player like Stephon Gilmore. Like those guys still want to play, but they've been waiting for the right situation, the right place to go to. Maybe wait for the trade deadline to pass. Look at which teams need them. Like there are players out there who have been very calculated with their decisions about when they want to come back. Carl Lawson, who signed last week of the Ravens, was exactly that as well. He believed the Ravens are still very much in it. He wanted to sign with them. He was told they'll elevate him here very soon. He took that opportunity. So he had 5 sacks last year in Dallas. Like there are teams who are interested in him, but he waited for the right opportunity. So even when the trade deadline passes, the idea of the veteran free agent market, which has not been so loud so far, could definitely pick up again.
All right, and let's go ahead and do the larger view here. You've talked a lot about the Tennessee Titans. You talked a lot about the New Orleans Saints. Are those the two primary teams that we should identify as sellers? And who are some of the other teams that we should definitely be looking at as under that umbrella as seller?
Yeah, I think the Titans, the Browns, the Jets, they all fall into that category there of teams who are looking to move on from some players. Most of the players are guys who are in, that final year of their contract or are, expendable or we're willing to move on from this guy after the season because we have a young guy on the roster. Like those teams, the Raiders, in a way, kind of fall into that category. The Giants, to an extent, fall into that category. Those are all teams that would put in that sellers category, but not necessarily a fire sale. I think the fire sale really is only in Tennessee. That's an organization that truly just wants to move on from as many players as possible and bring in as much added draft capital or do swaps to move up around or whatever it is. That team, from a roster perspective, they have not been, private about it. If you talk to people within that organization, they'll tell you the roster needs so much work. And if they could just get more draft picks, that could definitely help them over here in the future. As for the buying, I'm fascinated by a few teams here, but I'll start off with division. The NFC West to me is so interesting with the Rams at 5-2 and the Seahawks at 5-2 and the 49ers at 5-3. And you look at the recent history of those three teams in particular, they are the kings of the trade deadline. I mean, the 49ers go out there, they'll trade for a Christian McCaffrey, and the Rams will trade for a Von Miller or a Jalen Ramsey. And you have a team like the Seahawks who would trade for a Leonard Williams. Like these teams like to do trades before the trade deadline. It's part of their MO. If that's the case, I am so curious to see which one of these teams are like, you know what? Let's go out there and make the mega out of nowhere, out of left field move to try to get an edge in our division and win this division and get that home field advantage in the playoffs. Like, I think that's the way the NFC West operates and thinks with those GMs, with John Lynch, with Les Snead, with John Schneider. I am fascinated by the NFC West. And I think we just mentioned all these names of players who are available. Would not surprise me if one of those teams make a trade of a player that nobody has mentioned. That's how the NFC West usually operates. That's one thing I'm keeping a very close eye on over here, Ben. The Indianapolis Colts, best record in the NFL, 7-1. I think they're looking to add defense here. Lou Anarumo's defense has had some really good moments, some really bad moments. They're missing some players. Travarius Ward is on IR because of a concussion he suffered from his own player before a game. Like, they need help at linebacker. They could use some help in the secondary. They could use another pass rusher. I think Chris Ballard wants to make a move. Chris Ballard has never made an in-season trade as GM of the Indianapolis Colts. I'll say it right now, it is changing this year. I think he's only made one. I think he's made one. It was a running back swap. It was Naheem Hines for Zach Moss. Aside from that, he's made nothing. He's made nothing. So I think this is the year where he actually makes a legitimate in-season trade. The New England Patriots also very interesting to me. 6-2 on the year. I think you'll appreciate this, Ben. I think they're very reminiscent to last year's Washington Commanders, a team that is very out of nowhere having the success. No one expected them to have that success, and they decide, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's make another trade. Last year, Washington made the Marshawn Lattimore trade. What does New England have up their sleeve this year with all the success they're having with Drake May? And then a few more of y'all mentioned quickly: the Buffalo Bills in the receiver market. The Chiefs, I think, are in the defensive line market. The Jaguars also defensive line market. The Eagles hire Roseman. They're always hunting. Never rule them out. The Ravens, they played Thursday night. If they win, they're one game back of the AFC North. Go for it. Go make a trade. I think they're very much alive in the AFC North. And I mentioned this before. I think the Giants are in the receiver market to try to help their young quarterback. Hey guys, it's Ari here, and I'm excited to tell you that NFL Spotlight is sponsored by FanDuel Sportsbook this NFL season. And here on the show, we are here to give you an edge on your bets. And if you're a new customer, you right now go to the app, bet $5. If you win that $5 bet, you are going to get $300 in bonus bets. Sign up right now. Go to fanduel.com/33rd33RD. Bet $5. If that bet hits, you're getting $300 in FanDuel cash.
Yeah, all you new users got to go over there right now. I don't know what you've been doing if you're not already on the app, because you can go over there, build parlays, bet player props, ride the live lines, whatever your style is. FanDuel has got you covered. And right now, we've got a lot going on. We got NFL, MLB, and NBA action. So what are you waiting for?
Head over to fanduel.com/33rd33RD and sign up to get $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 wager hits. We're back on our winning ways here on the show. 5-3 on the season, picking Thursday Night Football. We're about to pick this week's game right now.
Yeah, and TNF this week is going to be a battle between two struggling AFC teams, but they're both coming off of wins in Week 8. With the Baltimore Ravens, they're going to be 7.5-point favorites on the road at the Miami Dolphins. Lamar Jackson is expected to make his return for the Ravens, which I am sure is what's pushing that line to over a touchdown. So how do you think this one shakes out, Ari?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Ravens have all the momentum back. The Steelers lost on Sunday night. They're right back in the AFC North. And I think it was very strategic of them to sit Lamar Jackson on Sunday. They did not want him to play 2 games in 5 days. Sit him, win the game. That's complete. And now, if they're able to win here on Thursday Night Football, they're right back in it in the AFC North. I think they might even make a trade before the trade deadline to improve the roster even more. I think the Ravens, with Lamar Jackson back, win this game over Miami and they cover the 7.5 number here. This team is back with vengeance. The defense looked way better than they have all season long this past week versus the Bears. I'm excited about this Ravens team. I feel like they're about to go on a run, and it started on Sunday, and now Lamar is back. I feel like that Ravens swag is coming back, and we're going to see it on Thursday night.
Giving hope to a 2-5 team, Ari. I love it. Super Bowl favorites to start the year over on FanDuel.com. So if you haven't already, go over there, sign up, FanDuel.com/33rd33RD. First $5 wager hits, $300 in bonus bets. Head over there now and sign up to be a part of FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in America. All right, we didn't plan this one, but I'm going to hit you with it anyway. Give me a dark horse. If you were just to take a stab and say, you know what, I don't know if this is necessarily going to happen, but this is a guy that's been in the back of my mind as somebody who could get dealt. Doesn't have to be someone you necessarily have intel on, but like, give me one name. Give me one name that I can look at and be like, you know what, just maybe somebody makes an outlandish offer and they have to say yes.
I think I'll mention there's so many teams looking for defensive tackle help, and I don't think we didn't mention many of them here on the show. I'll mention the two names that one of them I mentioned. I actually mentioned both of them. I wonder if one of these teams says, "Screw it, let's make the offer they can't refuse." For Jeffrey Simmons in Tennessee or Quinn Williams with the Jets. Those are the two that I'm keeping an eye on because there is a number of teams out here who want defensive tackle help. And if you're going to go for it, and we mentioned at the top of the show, there is aggressive GMs out there, there's hungry GMs out there, there's GMs who are willing to part ways with second round picks and first round picks and make the big package. Those are the names that I'm keeping an eye on. We keep on getting these reports. Tennessee will not trade Jeffrey Simmons and Cam Ward. Like, Jeffrey Simmons needs a new contract after this season. He's by far their best player. But if your timeline does not match where the organization is, then maybe just trade him for as much draft picks as you can get. Why pay him while the team is still going to suck the next couple of years? Why not try to get more draft picks now and try to help the team? So I mentioned the NFC West before. I mentioned the Jaguars before. I mentioned the Chiefs before. Like, all those teams are looking for defensive tackle help. So if that's the case, could we see one of those players who we keep on hearing reports that they're not available? Could a team make them available by making an offer they cannot refuse?
Los Angeles Rams have that extra first round pick. Man, can you imagine they say, you know what, we've got these young guys here. We've got a whole lot going for us, but we don't have our Aaron Donald yet.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And keep in
Quentin Williams
mind,
or Jeffrey Simmons. Ooh.
And keep this in mind, the Rams have 2 first round picks, like you said. One of them is going to be very low in the draft. Right now, they're 5-2. The other one, Atlanta, is 3-4, with the Patriots at 6-2 and the Colts at 7-1 coming up over here. So they could trade their own first round pick and still have a very high first round pick for the quarterback and for whatever else they want to do in April's draft. They're in a very good position. We know Les Snead. He loves making those in-season trades. He's been stocking up on those picks as of late, but that F them picks mentality is still in his head somewhere.
This is also nothing to do with anything we've talked about, but I love the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I love everything about them, from their quarterback to their front office to all this. How funny was Jason Light tweeting back for any of those who may have missed it? A nice little cut up.
You know, the Tampa Bay will probably go back to where Tampa Bay has been. Go back to where Tampa Bay has been. Go back to where Tampa Bay has been.
Did you like that, Ari?
I loved it, and we've had some of the former Buccaneers. John Spytek has been on the show, former Bucs assistant GM. We had the current Bucs assistant GM, Mike Greenberg, on the show. They love Jason Light. He's obviously a great player, but they've told me sometimes, like, we gotta control Jason with that Twitter to make sure he doesn't do anything too crazy. But it was
For
great
any of those
seeing.
who noticed, Cam Jordan had said
Yes.
that, the Buccaneers were going to return more back to the mean, and he put up a thing with Cam stats. And I love Cam. I've met him before, and he's an absolute sweetheart and just a very eccentric person. But good Lord, was that funny.
Jason Light, he keeps receipts of everything. There was that viral video that happened a couple years ago at the Combine where he showed a Sports Illustrated reporter, "You told us we're going to win 2 games. We won 10 games." He keeps that stuff in his office. If he has to tweet about it, he will. They keep all the receipts down there in Tampa Bay because, as you can tell, they deserve more recognition for being one of the better teams in the NFL. They only have 2 losses on the year, near the top of the NFC, top of the NFC South, and definitely don't sleep on them as well. We are trying to make a trade to improve that roster. They're on a bye right now, so they have some time as a front office to gather up and figure out what they want to do.
Jason Light, join us on the show at some point. We're going to have more spotlight guests coming up here on Tuesday. We like to mix in these specials because I think it's important to make sure that we're putting a spotlight on other things besides just the guests in the NFL. The trade deadline is obviously one of those things that needs its own time to be able to breathe and really go through it. If you haven't already, go back 2 weeks. We had our boss, Mike Tannenbaum, former GM of the New York Jets, on. He kind of talked about the intricacies of the deadline from a GM's perspective. It's a very insightful piece. If you have listened to this now, go back, listen to that. You can kind of get a very good broad scope of what's going to happen during this week from the front end perspective, as well as the players that we just discussed here that could be moved. Is there anything else we need to hit about the trade deadline, Ari?
I mean, get ready for a very, very fascinating week around the NFL. 1 week from today, the NFL trade deadline, those calls are happening. GMs are talking, they're texting, the group chats are moving. Everyone's trying to figure out exactly what's real and what's not. We're going to have some more deals this week, and then a plethora coming up over here next week, leading up to the NFL trade deadline coming up next Tuesday. That will do it here for our Tuesday, October 28th edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. We will be back here later this week, talk more about the NFL, maybe just maybe recap a trade or two as well. And we will see all of you here later this week.